couples can break free from the cycle of addiction and heal together. If you or your partner are stuck in the cycle of addiction, it's easy to feel like you're trapped. Like no matter how hard you try, you keep falling back to the same patterns. Addiction doesn't just affect the individual, it affects relationships, especially when emotional pain, conflict, or unhealed wounds are involved. But here's the good news. Breaking free from that cycle is possible. Today, I want to talk about how couples can recognize the signs of addiction in their relationship, and more importantly, how you can start healing together. It's a difficult journey, but it's one that you don't have to face alone. Recognizing the addiction cycle in your relationship. The first step in breaking free is recognizing when the addiction cycle is playing out in your relationship. Addiction can take many forms, whether it's substance use, unhealthy coping mechanisms, or behaviors like emotional avoidance. The key is to notice the patterns. Have you noticed that after a conflict, one of you turns to something to numb the pain? Whether it's alcohol, food, work, or something else? Maybe the argument isn't fully resolved. Instead of addressing it, you retreat to these behaviors. If this sounds familiar, it could be a sign that the cycle of addiction is at play in your relationship. Take a look at the cycle of addiction. Take a look at this cycle of addiction. The cycle starts with an emotional wound, something unresolved between you. Then comes the craving for a coping mechanism, the temporary high, and finally the low, where guilt and shame set in. The same patterns of avoidance, conflict, and numbing can repeat themselves, keeping you both trapped in a loop. Section 2, breaking the cycle together. Open communication. So, how do you break the cycle? The first and most important step is open communication. Couples often get stuck in the cycle because they're not talking about the real issues. Couples often get stuck in the cycle. You have to address the unspoken feelings that drive the addiction. For example, if you notice that one of you retreats to a harmful habit after an argument, try saying something like, I feel like we keep avoiding this issue by turning to other things. Can we talk about what's really bothering us? Not about blame, but about creating a space for honest conversation. Being open and vulnerable can feel scary, especially if you're used to avoiding conflict or using other ways to cope. But until you bring those underlying emotions to the surface, you'll keep repeating the same patterns. Section 3, building new coping mechanisms as a team. Once you've started communicating openly, the next step is to build new coping mechanisms together. Breaking free from the addiction cycle means finding healthier ways to handle emotional stress. This can't just be one-sided. It needs to be something you work on as a couple. What are some things you can do together to manage the stress or conflict without turning to harmful behaviors? Maybe it's going for a walk when things get heated, or committing to regular check-ins, or they escalate into conflict. You can try meditating together, practicing mindfulness, or working on hobbies that bring you both joy. The goal is to replace the unhealthy coping mechanisms with positive, constructive actions. By doing this as a team, you not only break the addiction cycle, but you also build a stronger, more resilient relationship. When you face these challenges together, you reinforce the idea that you're both on the same side, working towards healing. Section 4, professional support and boundaries. It's also important to recognize that breaking the cycle often requires professional support. Addiction and emotional wounds can run deep, and while communication and coping strategies help, sometimes it's necessary to bring in a therapist or counselor. Couples therapy can provide a safe space for both of you to work through the deeper issues that might be feeding the cycle. When looking for a therapist, Consider someone who specializes in addiction and relationships so they can help both of you navigate these complexities. And if one of you is struggling more with addiction, individual therapy or support groups can be incredibly helpful. Finally, don't forget the power of boundaries. If one of you falls back into old patterns, it's important to set clear, healthy boundaries around behavior that harms the relationship. This doesn't mean abandoning your partner, but it does mean holding each other accountable for staying on the path towards healing. Breaking free from addiction is hard work, but it's worth it. By communicating openly, building new coping mechanisms, and seeking support when needed, you can move forward together and create a healthy, stronger relationship. In the next video, I'll be talking about how to recognize and heal from emotional wounds that you might be carrying from your past and how they might be affecting your relationship today. Healing these wounds is a key part of breaking free from the cycle of addiction. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a friend. Also, comment below. How are you and your partner working to break free from harmful cycles? Thank you and take care.